Okay, there are details and then there's details. And this episode is for people who are super detail oriented like me and why I make an effort to simulate the appearance of spot welds. So please stick around.
Garage time.
Okay, the factory, and even to this day, used spot welders, which is a resistance welding where two probes come together and just melt the metal together without adding any filler. There's no grinding, it's super quick, and it makes sense for a factory who is cranking out cars quickly. When you're repairing a car, it's generally accepted that you may not be able to have, either you don't have a spot welder like me, I don't even have one, and if you did, access is somewhat difficult because you're replacing a part with the car all around it. So access is always difficult, and some of the entry-level spot welders are, sort of questionable whether the integrity is as good as like a factory spot welder. So the method that is generally accepted in the industry is to use a MIG welder and do what's called a plug weld or a rosette weld. The problem with this method, the rosette weld, is that even if you're a perfect welder, it's gonna look different. It's not going to look like the factory did. I do inspections from time to time for people on cars, and it's one of those things I look for, so I'm kind of clued into it. I'm going to show you how I can try to simulate the spot weld. Not that I'm trying to con anybody into this is a factory panel. I mean, here it is on YouTube. I'm going to show you the whole step here on my bench just because the lighting's better and it's easier to show on camera. Okay, these holes are 5/16. I like to use the punch because it just makes a much cleaner hole. There's no burrs on either side, so it's ready to do the welding. So this doesn't want to sit flat because of the way the parts aren't exactly flat. So I usually will clamp this. Okay, one clamp has got these three holes here pretty tight. Okay, I'm going to explain what I'm trying to do with the welder. So the electrode, the welder's off right now so you can hear me, but the electrode goes in the center of the hole. So I start here at the center, I brace my, torch or the nozzle with my other hand. I always wear a glove on this hand. So I support it here, I start in the middle, and then I usually go counterclockwise, one circle. So in the middle, counterclockwise. In the middle, counterclockwise. Here's what the raw welds look like. This one slipped a little bit in the vise as I was welding it, so it has a little extra piece stuck on there. These are relatively flat, but again, they don't look like spot welds. They look like MIG welds. I purposely like to leave the welder on a pretty high setting when doing plug welds, so you do get this full penetration on either side. Okay, the next step I'm going to do is not totally necessary, but it does help when trying to grind these welds flat. I just have a little bit of quick drying primer. So I just put a real light coat so it's just one color. Okay, the reason for the paint is I'm going to come back with this, this is a die grinder, 60 grit 2-inch Roloc disc. And I just want to take off the proud areas of the weld. I don't want to sand the undisturbed sheet metal. There are some craters, left on the weld. So right where those craters are is where the center of the weld is. And I'm just going to simulate the spot weld right on top of that. Okay, the first trick to simulating the spot weld is this tool right here. This is a die grinder, and it has a carbide bit right here on top. This is solid carbide. It's a carbide burr, and you can see the shape. It's kind of a, I don't know what you call this, but kind of a conical shape. And this is what I recommend to sort of do the first step on getting that divot where it looks like a spot weld. So let me show you. I hope you get the idea on that. I slipped a little bit, but you can see there's 3 little depressions in the metal. The weld metal is extremely hard, but just because of the high temperatures and the quick cooling, it actually makes it very difficult to put the depressions in. And that's why I recommend the carbide. Okay, the last step on this is to put another coat of primer on. And then I'm using an eraser. So this is just a regular eraser. It's got a little bit of a round end to it. And while the primer is, somewhat wet, I just push it in the hole and rotate around. Okay, this still needs to dry some. And I didn't really use the right primer. This is not a high build primer. High build primer is better. So what you're trying to do is displace the primer onto the edges. So it creates a little bit of a ring around the spot weld, just as the original ones have. So that's the trick, at least my trick anyways. This does not weaken the part at all. I think it looks a little bit better than a big glob of rosette weld, but let me know what you think. Is this over restoration or over restored, or is this something that you think you might do?